This one wasn't made to entertain you. It was created to awaken you. It doesn't matter if you found it by chance, through intuition, or because something inside you no longer fit with the outside world. You are here because a forgotten part of you has brought you back. Maybe you asked for it silently, without words, in the middle of a long night, with that subtle feeling that life couldn't possibly be just this. This is not a book of quick fixes or ready-made phrases. It is a sonic ritual, a mirror without filters, a frequency designed to reach the places the mind cannot touch. You won't be given formulas. You will remember rhythms. You won't be taught something new. You will reclaim what was already within you, but buried. This isn't about asking, it's about claiming, about no longer negotiating with the universe, but remembering that you are the one shaping it. Because nothing manifests unless you vibrate with it, and nothing changes outside unless you're willing to break things apart within yourself. This audiobook is a crack in the programming, a download that doesn't aim to convince you, but to resonate with you. If you choose to keep listening, be ready. You won't remain the same, because once this is activated, it cannot be switched off. If this message stirred something inside you, don't ignore it. Subscribe now to Wisdom Collection and turn on the bell, because here we don't just upload content. We share keys, audiobooks created daily for souls in the process of awakening, for minds seeking more than information, looking for transformation. This is your space, your moment, your sign. See you in the next audiobook. And now, we begin. Chapter 1. The field doesn't respond to what you think, it responds to what you radiate. For years, you were taught to think positively, to repeat phrases in front of the mirror, to declare your goals with determination, and to believe that this would be enough, that the universe works like a machine that grants what you ask, that if you think well, life will go well, and that if you affirm with strength, you will attract your desires. And yet here you are, surrounded by realities you did not consciously choose, situations that don't look like your dreams, patterns repeating like a persistent echo. Where's the mistake? If you have affirmed so much and still what you asked for hasn't shown up, maybe it isn't a mistake at all. Maybe you've just been following the wrong map. The universe doesn't answer to your words, it responds to your vibration. And your vibration isn't what you say out loud when you're motivated. Your vibration is what you radiate when everything has gone quiet. It is the energetic state you carry in silence, when you're no longer performing, when no one is watching, when the masks are gone. That is the frequency shaping the field, and from that invisible space creation unfolds. There's a truth that is both unsettling and liberating. You don't live what you wish for, you live what you are. And that being is not defined by your public image or your New Year's resolution. It's defined by the energetic frequency you hold as your core identity, the field surrounding you, the quantum, energetic, vibrational field, however you choose to name it. It doesn't read your scattered thoughts, nor your midnight hopes. It reads your coherence, your inner alignment, your vibrational truth. And here lies the knot. Many times you believe you are thinking positively, yet you are still vibrating from fear. You may say, "I'm ready to welcome love," but your field whispers, "I don't trust that I'll be loved unconditionally." You may declare, "I'm manifesting abundance," yet your energy shouts, "I'm not enough to sustain it." The universe doesn't respond to your voice. It responds to your field, and the field cannot lie. Most people have been raised within a mentalist paradigm. They were told that the mind creates reality, that if you control your thoughts, you can control your life. But the mind is only a tool. It's not the command center. The real center goes deeper. It is energetic, vibrational, emotional. If you don't learn to inhabit that space, you'll keep believing something outside of you is blocking you, when in reality, it's your own vibration creating the obstacles that frustrate you. Think of it this way. If your vibration were music, what song is playing when no one else is in the room? What melody flows when you are not repeating affirmations? What tone resonates in your field when your body lets go, when your defenses fall, when you stop pretending? That is what shapes your reality. That is what the universe reads. It's not by chance that the same kinds of people keep showing up in your life, the same types of conflicts, the same emptiness disguised as new opportunities. Everything that repeats in your life is vibrating within you, not because you deserve it or because you asked for it, but because you sustain it, because without realizing it, you keep broadcasting it. That is the signal your field has learned to project. Often it comes from childhood, other times from unresolved wounds, and almost always from parts of yourself you haven't looked at with compassion. The great secret isn't that you can create reality. It's that you already are creating it, right now, in every moment. You cannot not create. Your very existence emits a signal, and that signal shapes the forms of your world. The issue is that most of the time you do it unconsciously, without awareness, without presence. You're not seeing the world as it is. You're seeing it as you are vibrationally. And until you face that truth, you'll keep trying to change the image in the mirror without realizing the change only happens when you shift the light projecting it. Because form is always the last stage of vibration. The universe doesn't respond to the desire you announce. It responds to the frequency you hold as true. That changes everything. Vibration is not declared. It is embodied. You cannot force it. You cannot fake it. You may repeat affirmations all day long, but if your body tells a different story, the field will align with your body, not your mind. Energy doesn't move through empty words. It moves through genuine emotion. And authenticity requires no proof. It vibrates with its own strength. So, what to do with this? First of all, stop lying to yourself. Stop acting as if you don't know, because you do know. Your body knows, your silence knows, your sleepless nights know. What has happened is that you learn to mute that inner voice in order to fit in, to survive, to avoid discomfort. But you are no longer here for that. You are no longer here to uphold a life that doesn't reflect who you are. You are here to remember that you are the source, not a vessel waiting to be filled. Start with the simplest, the deepest thing. Observe yourself without judgment. Pause. Close your eyes. Don't try to visualize anything. Just feel yourself. Ask with honesty, what am I vibrating when I'm not trying to appear fine? And listen, not with your head, but with your body. Listen to what your stomach says, what your shoulders hold, what your chest cries during sleepless hours. That is your real vibration. When you can name it, you will have taken the first step toward true transformation. Because what is named truthfully begins to shift. What is acknowledged stops working in the shadows, and what is embraced loses its power over you. This book won't ask you to think pretty thoughts. It will ask you to fully embody yourself, to take command of your field, to speak from your soul, to emit from your core. Because it's not about convincing the universe. It's about becoming such a coherent, such an authentic, such a alive frequency that reality has no choice but to rearrange itself around you. This is what it means to vibrate. Not pretending, not forcing, not declaring things that your body doesn't believe. Vibrating as someone who no longer needs results to know they are real. Vibrating as someone who remembers that creation doesn't happen outside, but from within. And you, though you had forgotten, have always been the emitter. Chapter 2. You don't attract, you project. When you hear the word attract, something inside you feels relieved, as if you weren't responsible for what arrives. As if your role were simply that of a receiver who waits, who trusts, who begs the universe with nice words to bring what is desired. It's a comfortable idea. It places you in the middle of a room, hands open, eyes lifted to the sky. But it isn't real. It's an illusion dressed as spirituality. The truth, though less romantic, is far more powerful. You don't attract, you project. You don't wait for something to come toward you. You are the origin point from which everything expands. The difference between attracting and projecting changes everything. To attract implies that something is outside, that you are incomplete, that something else must come and fill the emptiness. Projecting, instead, recognizes that you are the emitting center, that the reality you experience doesn't fall upon you, it originates from you. Nothing arrives by chance. Nothing comes just because you thought about it strongly or repeated an affirmation with excitement. What comes does so because it was already vibrating inside you, because your energetic field was broadcasting it continuously. Even if your mind wasn't aware, even if your words said something else. This is not a metaphor, it is a principle. And like every energetic principle, it operates with mathematical precision. Whether you believe it or not, whether you fully understand it or not, you are living it anyway. Every situation that repeats, every draining relationship, every obstacle disguised as coincidence is the result of a sustained vibration, not of a fleeting desire, not of a passing thought, but of an inner emission that has become your language with the universe. The challenge is that you almost never know what you're projecting, because you were taught to control your thoughts, but not to observe your vibration. You were trained to repeat affirmations, not to carry out vibrational audits. And so you get frustrated. You ask, why isn't it working? Why do the same cycles repeat? Why does change seem impossible? The truth is, it's not resisting, it's reflecting. Reality isn't fighting against you. It's showing you your inner emission like a perfect mirror. Picture this. You walk through life with a lantern glowing from your chest. You can't see it, but everyone else can. That lantern doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your inner state. If that light is chaotic, fragmented by fears and unresolved lacks, the world around you arranges itself in chaos. Opportunities don't come, or they arrive only to slip away. Relationships don't endure, or they cling together around old wounds. But if that light becomes clear, steady, coherent with your deepest truth, the environment responds. Not because it hears you, but because it recognizes you. When you project from your shadow, life mirrors back the parts of yourself that remain unintegrated. When you project from your wound, everything you see carries the shape of the pain you've avoided facing. And that, right there, is the root of most blockages. You're not attracting unfair situations. You're broadcasting a signal that says, this is what I believe I deserve. Even if you deny it consciously, even if you repeat the opposite in front of a mirror. The mirror is uncomfortable. It's easier to say, I'm blocked, than to admit I'm projecting fear of being seen. It's easier to say, the universe doesn't listen to me, than to admit, my field is carrying a frequency I don't even recognize. But if you stay in that comfort, you remain trapped, still projecting unconsciously, and the universe, faithful as always, keeps organizing your reality around that unnoticed emission. So here comes the next step, a radical, uncomfortable but necessary question. What part of me is being projected in this experience I am living right now? If you repeat the same arguments in different relationships, what frequency are you sending out? If money slips away before it even arrives, what part of you is still vibrating in structural lack? If your body screams with symptoms, what emotional story has become chronic? This isn't about blaming or punishing yourself. It's about regaining command. And regaining command doesn't mean shouting louder at the universe. It means adjusting your signal. Projection doesn't change with force, but with presence. You don't need to do more. You need to be different in your base frequency. The first step is to look at yourself with no anesthesia, no spiritual makeup, no hollow phrases. Just you facing your field, asking with sincerity, what am I emitting right now? The life you have is the one you project. And no, it's not a life sentence. It's an opportunity. Because if it comes from you, you also hold the power to transform it, not with magical techniques, but with awareness, with true vibrational practice, with decisions that shift not only your thoughts but your field. Because your field responds to what you hold as truth, not to what you say you want. The universe doesn't move with promises. It bends to your coherence. Stop asking. Stop waiting. Stop demanding from the universe what you are unconsciously blocking yourself. Instead, begin to embody the version of you that already projects from remembrance, not from need, from expansion, not from urgency, from the certainty that everything you see emerges from what you carry inside. Nothing arrives without first being summoned, shaped, and emitted by your deepest energy. Today, choose to look at your reality like a screen revealing your vibration, not to judge yourself, but to know yourself. Then choose to project from another place, not from emptiness, but from the fullness that already lives in you the moment you stop lying to yourself. Because change doesn't begin when the universe answers. It begins when your field stops emitting contradictions. And in that moment, you don't attract, you transform. In Chapter 1, we understood that the universe responds to vibration, not thought. In Chapter 2, we shattered the myth of attraction and revealed that what you live is what you project. And now, in Chapter 3, we go deeper into the body. Because when the mind goes quiet, the body speaks. And what it says isn't a symptom, it is a vibrational truth. Get ready, because this cuts deep. Chapter 3. The body listens to what the mind denies. There is something within you that never lies. No matter how much effort you put into convincing yourself you're fine, that you've healed, that everything is under control, there is one part of you that cannot be fooled by affirmations or positive speeches. That part is your body. Your body is the most honest channel you have. It is the most loyal messenger of your soul. And what it expresses through pain, tension, insomnia, chronic symptoms, or exhaustion you can't explain is not a mistake. It is a message, a physical reflection of an energetic vibration you've avoided facing, a visible manifestation of an emotion buried so deeply that your mind has forgotten it, but your body hasn't. Most people believe that emotions are processed with the mind, that if they understand why they feel bad, it's enough to heal it, that if they can put words to the trauma, the body will reorganize itself. But the truth is more complex. Emotions aren't archived in the mind, they're stored in the body, and whatever isn't allowed to be felt turns into tension, blockage, illness, into dense vibration that the quantum field renders into physical form, because unexpressed emotion and unreleased energy become biology. There are pains that are screams, symptoms that are pleas, and illnesses that don't arrive to destroy, but to pull you out of a frequency that was silently killing you. But healing can't happen without recognition, and nothing transforms if it isn't dared to be felt. That's why the body sometimes erupts, breaks down, or stops, as a way to force a listening to what has been refused inside. Have you ever asked why the back aches every day right at the end of the workday? Why a lump rises in the throat whenever a boundary must be set? Why the digestive system is thrown off when facing certain people or places? It isn't random. It's accumulated vibration, an unspoken emotion, a frequency of sacrifice, fear, abandonment, or guilt so normalized that it's no longer recognized as foreign to well-being. The body isn't the enemy. It isn't failing. It's trying to guide back home. It is the guardian of the energetic field, and each symptom is a form of compensation, a way the vibration seeks balance when conscious will can no longer hold it. Some try to heal with routines, workouts, and new habits, and that can help. But if the root lies in a forgotten emotion, nothing truly shifts, because the body doesn't need correction, it needs presence. It needs less thinking about how to heal and more inhabiting of what is actually being felt, and what is felt isn't always pretty or comfortable. Sometimes it's old sadness, anger that never found a voice, or a fear so ancient it's mistaken for personality. But the body knows. The body does not forget, and when at last feeling is allowed, without judgment, without escape, without denial, something loosens, something reorders. Not like magic, like coherence. Coherence means what is thought, felt, and done are no longer at war. Words no longer contradict energy. The mind no longer cancels emotion. And when that happens, the body responds. Because the body doesn't need perfection, only truth. Biology doesn't expect an enlightened being. It expects honesty. Often, the real act of healing isn't doing anything but stopping the flight from self, sitting in silence, breathing, and saying with the body, "I'm here. I'm willing to feel whatever is needed to return to my center." That instant, small as it seems, shifts the field, shifts the frequency, because the repressed emotion stops pleading at full volume, because the body stops carrying alone what the self was afraid to see. And what happens when that trapped energy begins to release? Everything changes, not just the pain. The way of walking changes, how speaking happens changes, the quality of rest changes, the gaze changes, the projection changes, because mixed signals are no longer sent to the field, no longer saying "I'm fine" while holding an ocean of anguish inside, no longer declaring health while vibrating from fear of symptoms. Then the field responds, because the vibration has become a single thing, authentic, coherent, clear. And when that occurs, the body celebrates, and reality does too, because there's no fragmentation between what is and what is lived, no interference in the energetic signal, because at last, what was always there has been remembered. The body doesn't break, it protects. Today, don't rush to the next technique. Don't try to change anything outside. Sit with self. Close the eyes and feel. Ask the body, "What are you trying to tell me that I still refuse to hear?" Then place a hand where it hurts, not to fix it, but to listen and let it speak. Because what is called pain may be the doorway, to the deepest liberation. Chapter 4. Coherent Emotion as a Universal Language. There are languages written with letters, with symbols, with sounds. There are dialects learned through effort, with books and repetition, but there is also a language that no school teaches, that isn't spoken with the mouth, and cannot be translated into words. It's a language so ancient it precedes speech, so precise it leaves no room for misunderstanding, and so powerful it can shape matter without any physical contact. That language is coherent emotion, and it's the idiom the universe understands without a single word. This language doesn't need words to organize reality. It doesn't require positive phrases or declarations shouted at the sky. It only asks for one thing: vibrational coherence. When what is felt, what is thought, and what is done are aligned without inner contradiction, the field becomes a pure emission. And when the emission is pure, reality responds without delay, without conflict, without static, not because the universe was manipulated, but because there is oneness with it. Most people live in states of energetic fragmentation. Outwardly, they smile. Inwardly, they tremble. Outwardly, they say they trust. Inwardly, they vibrate in suspicion, fear, and control. Outwardly, they claim they are worthy, yet in their cells still echoes the belief they must prove, sacrifice, or compete to be granted anything. That contradiction, that inner incoherence, is what distorts the field, blocks the flow, and keeps reality from reflecting clearly. It's not that the universe doesn't hear. It hears what is truly being vibrated, not what is said. It hears the energetic tone, not the spiritual monologue. It hears the sustained emotional state, not the breakfast affirmations. Therefore, the principle is not declare what you want, but sustain the emotion that represents it. You don't receive what you say you desire. You manifest what you are already vibrating as a stable truth. Here lies the key that changes everything. Coherent emotion is not a fake feeling. It's not about forcing gratitude when it isn't present. It's not saying I'm at peace while carrying a war inside. Pretending an emotion only emits more disorder because the body knows you're acting. The field records it, and the universe detects it, not as punishment, but through vibrational precision. So what does emotional coherence mean? It means inhabiting what is felt with presence, without judging it. It means allowing anger if anger is there, sadness if sadness is there, but not getting stuck, recognizing it, moving through it, and then consciously choosing a new emotion to hold as the baseline, not as makeup, but as an anchor, not as denial, but as vibrational evolution. Some believe only positive emotions create reality. That's not entirely true. All emotions create. The difference is the kind of reality they generate. Sustained anger creates confrontations. Chronic sadness creates stagnation. Prolonged guilt recreates pain. Not because the emotion is bad, but because it has become the field's base signal, and the field always responds to what is transmitted with the most strength, not with the most logic. Now observe. When a coherent emotion enters the body, everything shifts. Breathing changes. Posture changes. Tone of voice changes. Decision-making changes. Confidence isn't being faked. It's being embodied. Peace isn't being wished for. It's being lived. Coherent emotion doesn't need validation because it already vibrates as true. It doesn't require results to hold because it is an emission, not an expectation. Think of someone who breathes calmly, walks with presence, and speaks from a solid center. That person can sit in complete silence and still alter the energy of a room, not because they are special, but because they are emitting from a coherence many have forgotten. They're not trying to persuade anyone. They're simply a clear frequency, and that clarity reorganizes. The HeartMath Institute in the United States found that when the human heart genuinely sustains emotions like gratitude, compassion, or appreciation, the electromagnetic field it generates expands and becomes more coherent. That field doesn't only affect the one who emits it, it also influences the environment. Coherent emotion reshapes the geometry of reality. This simple, this literal, and no technology is needed to verify it. It's enough to notice what happens when an emotion is held for a few minutes. Try it. Recall a real moment of gratitude, not a fantasy, but a true one, when everything inside felt aligned. Breathe from there. Feel how the body begins to change, as if every cell said, "This is home." That sensation is the language the universe understands. That frequency is the true channel of creation. It isn't necessary to hold it all day. That would be impossible. But it is possible to choose it more easily each time, to train the field to return to that signal like returning to a temple. The more it's emitted, the more it becomes a vibrational identity. And when that coherent emotion becomes the center, anything misaligned with it begins to fade, not from rejection, but from mismatch. What doesn't resonate simply stops sustaining itself. So today, don't ask what to manifest. Ask which emotion must be sustained to be the source of what is wished to be seen outside. It's not about dreaming higher, but vibrating deeper. Not about convincing the universe, but becoming the field that already lives that reality. Do this. Choose an emotion, not an idea, not a phrase. An emotion. Perhaps peace, perhaps joy, perhaps trust. Then recall a moment when it was real. Return there. Feel, breathe from that memory, and when the frequency settles within, simply remain, without asking, without acting. Just vibrate. The universe doesn't respond to effort. It responds to energetic truth. A coherent emotion is a truth that needs no explanation. This is the most potent language to speak, the purest, the clearest. When vibration ceases to be a confused mix of contradictions and becomes a steady, grounded signal, there is no field that doesn't respond, no reality that doesn't bend, no transformation that fails to begin. Words have power, but what is felt as true creates worlds. We now enter Chapter 5, a crucial step in the journey. By now it's clear it isn't about thinking but vibrating, not attracting but projecting, that the body doesn't fall ill without reason. It speaks what the mind silences, and that sustaining coherent emotion creates without strain. Now comes a deeper step. What is seen in the world isn't what is. It is what is being, in the act of observing. Prepare for the next vibrational leap. Chapter C, the inner observer. Change the one who looks, and what's looked at changes. Imagine standing in a hall of mirrors. Every wall, angle, and corner reflects. There's no escape, no inch that doesn't return a version of the self. But curiously, the reflections are not identical. Some distort, some shadow, some enlarge, some diminish. Confusion leads to thinking the mirror is broken, that reality is at fault. But what if the mirror has no flaw? What if what is seen depends entirely on how the gaze is cast, and more deeply on who is being when observing? In quantum physics, a phenomenon both perplexing and revolutionary, the double-slit experiment, shows that light can behave as a wave or as matter depending on whether it is observed. Matter behaves differently when observed, not when touched, not when desired, when observed. But not just any observation. What changes the outcome is not superficial attention, but the inner state of the observer. This isn't only physics, it's embodied spirituality, pointing beyond theory. Reality doesn't behave the same if the self is not the same. The world shifts not because the things change, but because the one who looks has changed. What is seen isn't independent of the self. It is an extension of the observer's frequency. If anxiety is present, the world turns urgent. If judgment is held, everything appears as error. If lack is the baseline, reality seems full of what is missing. And if alignment and presence are rooted in a deep truth, the world opens, doors appear, signals intensify. Not because the world changed, but because the observer became someone else in the act of looking. Notice how the same situation can feel entirely different depending on the inner state. A silence can be awkward or sacred. A glance can read as threat or tenderness. An opportunity can seem chaos or miracle. The event is the same. The observer has changed. Therefore, the observed has changed. This principle is not just for understanding, but for embodiment. Until integrated, there's a lingering belief in being a victim of what is seen, without recognizing that everything seen is a projection of the vantage point. Changing the gaze isn't an intellectual act. It's a vibrational reconfiguration, a return to the self, releasing the reactive persona, and assuming the soul that chooses how to behold reality. The most powerful part, it isn't necessary to change the world, only where the gaze comes from. It's not about faking optimism or denying pain, but inhabiting a different vibration while observing. For example, A financial situation can be seen from fear or from possibility, an argument from wound or from compassion, the body from criticism or from gratitude. The choice not only shapes feeling, it literally molds what happens next. The observer is not innocent, it is creator, and even if forgotten, that power resides in every cell. Training has favored a gaze of judgment, urgency, comparison. But it is always possible to look again from the soul, and when that happens, what is seen reconfigures. This means every moment holds a sacred chance, not to control events, but to decide who will be in the act of seeing, the one who looks from the wound or from awareness, from trauma or from choice, from reaction or from integrated vibration. Try it today. Choose a situation that usually triggers you, a conflict with someone, an unresolved problem, a heavy sense of lack, and look at it differently, but not with the mind. First, shift your state. Breathe. Inhabit a higher emotion. Then look at it and notice what changes in you and, by reflection, what changes in it. Because when the observer changes, the observed inevitably changes. This chapter didn't come to give another technique. It came to return a forgotten truth. You are the center of the field around you. You are the emitter, the mirror, and also the eye that beholds. And when there is a conscious choice of which vibration to observe from, everything that seemed immovable begins to move. Everything that looked like chaos starts to find order, not by miracle, but by resonance. Remember this: each time the world frustrates, don't ask why this is happening. Ask from where it is being seen, because the answer isn't in what appears, it's in who is being while seeing it. Chapter 6 is pivotal in this journey. Here we enter the heart of the vibrational system, the unconscious pattern that sustains reality without awareness, the one called the vibrational guardian. This chapter is meant to touch deep fibers, stir memories, and open doors sealed for years. It will be received with the depth, intensity, and breadth it deserves. Chapter 6. The vibrational guardian, the unconscious pattern that signs your reality. There is a part that decides even before thought arises, so ancient it has no language. Yet it writes life with surgical precision. It operates silently, without asking permission, yet signs every reality experienced. That aspect is what will be called the vibrational guardian. The guardian is not an external entity, not an energetic curse, not an imposed karma. It is a deeply installed inner pattern living in the energetic field as a base frequency. It is the root of the emission, the tone of vibration. Even when calm seems present, it decides without consulting what can be lived and what cannot. Most disconcerting of all, that pattern was not created by the adult self. It was formed by the child once was, not by what happened, but by what was felt when it happened. The vibrational guardian is born when the system decides protection is more important than expansion. Picture a small child growing in an emotionally unstable environment, where expressing truth feels risky, where spontaneity equals rejection, where love is conditional upon performance, silence, obedience. That child does not make sense of the world through logic, but through energy, through the emotional frequency perceived, and then issues an unconscious command to the field. It isn't safe to be who I am. Better to hide. If I feel, it hurts. If I shine, I am punished. That command isn't forgotten. It becomes a base vibration, installs in the body, imprints the field. Even if that child grows, studies, becomes successful or self-aware, the pattern remains, signing agreements without permission, projecting limits despite power affirmations, shaping relationships, opportunities, and choices. Not because there is weakness, but because it still operates from the frequency of protection. The vibrational guardian doesn't seek to harm, it seeks to keep to the known. Its logic is simple. If this kept me safe before, better keep broadcasting the same vibration. The soul wants to expand, but the nervous system wants to survive. And without integration, life becomes contradiction. Something new is wanted, yet the vibration clings to the old programming. Ever wondered why situations consciously disliked repeat? Why self-sabotage appears right when things go well? Why success, real love, or being truly seen triggers anxiety? It isn't random. It's the vibrational guardian triggering the inner alarm of this is not safe. Then, without noticing, the frequency is changed. There's retreat, hiding, canceling, running, not because it isn't deserved, but because the system still vibrates with "this is too much." Here lies the problem. As long as the guardian remains unseen, it decides. It seems like decisions are being made, but it is the guardian signing the energetic contracts with reality, the one accepting or rejecting, the one setting how much abundance can be held, how much love can be received, how much peace can be allowed. Daily declarations of "I am worthy" can be made, but if the field emits "this isn't safe," the universe responds to the field, not the decree. The field doesn't obey the declaration. It responds to what is unconsciously sustained. How is that pattern deactivated? It isn't fought. It isn't broken. It is integrated. The first step is conscious revelation, realizing it isn't the true self sabotaging, but a part that was created to survive in an environment where wholeness wasn't safe. It is about thanking it, acknowledging it, meeting its gaze and saying, "Thank you for protecting all this time, but choosing is no longer your job. Now the choosing is done here." Integration doesn't happen in the mind. It happens in the body, in the breath, in daily practice, in every moment when fear of success, love, or visibility arises. And there is a choice to stay, not to force, but to deactivate the old signal with new presence. Presence is the only frequency the guardian cannot resist, because the more presence there is, the more truth there is. And in truth, there is no room for the old pattern. Want to know who the vibrational guardian is? Look where self-sabotage repeats the most, the things most desired and most difficult, the emotions that destabilize, the decisions perpetually delayed. There it is, not as an enemy, but as a clue, a hidden code, the password once needed to survive but now useless for living. Many carry it for a lifetime unknowingly, continuing to read books, perform rituals, and repeat mantras without real results. Because nothing works if the guardian is broadcasting a frequency opposed to the desire. Internal incoherence blocks the field. The universe doesn't punish, but it does wait for order. Today, try something radical. Sit in silence with eyes closed and ask, not with the mind, but with the body, who has been signing my energetic decisions until now? Listen without rush. It may arrive as a memory, a sensation, or an emotion thought forgotten. Don't judge it. Just look at it and say with firmness and love, "Thank you." But now the frequency is chosen here. From that moment, real change begins. The field reconfigures, the vibration aligns. The guardian doesn't vanish, but recognizes the new center. And when the center shifts, reality can do nothing but follow. Excellent. Now stepping into one of the most transformative chapters of the entire vibrational journey. The mirror, not the one used to see the face, but the one that shows the soul, even when there's reluctance to look. This chapter is meant to shake things up, and it will. Take it slowly, breathe, and allow a reading of self within it. Chapter 7. The Hidden Mirror. Everything not accepted gets projected. There is no greater teacher than the mirror, no truer ally, no more precise executioner. The mirror doesn't opine, justify, or protect. The mirror simply reveals. In this vibrational universe where all is resonance, the entire reality is a mirror, not a literal, decorative one, but a deep, symbolic, exact mirror reflecting without censorship the precise frequency being held, especially what isn't recognized as one's own. It seems like the world is being watched, but in truth, what's seen are fragments, what's criticized in others, what irritates without clear reason, what keeps returning in different forms, faces, stages. None of that is out there. It is reflection, an echo of an unintegrated vibration that keeps projecting so it can be seen. Not to punish, but because the soul is ready to stop running from itself. Projection is one of the oldest mechanisms of the psycho-energetic structure. When an emotion can't be accepted, due to pain, shame, learned judgment, it gets projected, expelled, seen in others, and then it bothers, triggers, inflames, not because it lives in them, but because it lives within and hasn't yet been embraced. That's why patterns repeat. Authoritarian bosses, partners who don't listen, friends who disappoint, not bad luck, but disowned parts of self. By the law of vibration, The field is compelled to embody them so they can be witnessed. What isn't accepted is given by the universe, not as a gift, as a mirror. Annoyed by others' arrogance? Perhaps a part of self still won't permit its own shine. Hurt by not being valued? Perhaps true self-respect hasn't yet taken root. Pained by not being heard? Perhaps the strangled inner cry hasn't yet been listened to. The field is an impersonal teacher. It doesn't serve the ego or guard the image. It reflects what's vibrated in silence. If such a reflection is resisted, it becomes a storm. What isn't integrated with awareness returns with force. What's denied as emotion returns as pattern. What's repressed as story manifests as reality again and again, until the eyes open, not to change the other, but to recognize what's being projected. Shadow isn't evil. Shadow is everything not yet learned to love. It's the corner of history hidden for fear of not being loved. The silenced emotion to avoid discord. The version that didn't fit the molds of right. Today that shadow, unseen though it may be, continues to project reality, not to penalize, but to insist on being seen and brought home. Transformation begins here, when requests for outer change end, and there's a seat taken before the mirror to face what's truly at play. It isn't about hunting errors. It's about radical honesty. Who am I being as this unfolds? Which part is being ignored? Which emotion is asking for integration? These questions aren't answered with the mind. They're answered by feeling the body, observing the pattern, acknowledging the story without judgment. Then the field shifts, not by magic, but by order, because it no longer needs to project what there's willingness to witness. The remarkable thing is, there's no need to understand it all, no need to know when it started or who activated it. It's enough to sit with the reflection and stop denying presence within it, to see that the person who irritates is an exiled chapter, that the recurring conflict is an unseen wound, that the painful lack is a truth not yet recognized as false. The mirror doesn't seek blame. It asks for what is one's own to be reclaimed. As long as the external is seen as separate, there's the stance of spectator. Life wasn't entered to be watched from the outside, but to remember that everything before the eyes resonates, or it wouldn't be there. It can feel tough, and it can be, but it's the most direct door to real power. When everything is understood as reflection, the pleading and accusing stop, and the rightful place is assumed. Vibrational creator. Do this today. Choose 3 people or situations that have recently disturbed equilibrium. Don't analyze. Feel them in the body and ask, which part of me is shouting through this? Perhaps it's an unacknowledged need, an old judging voice, an open childhood wound. Whatever it is, stop running and begin to inhabit it. When truly seen, something breaks, or rather something releases. The field adjusts, the reflection dissolves, and that person or situation stops activating something inside, because the part that projected the image is no longer being rejected. This is how deep healing operates, not by removing the mirror, but by looking at what it shows with compassion. In that gaze there is no judgment. There is integration, freedom, and above all, truth. The self is not only light, it is also shadow. When the war with that truth ends, vibration becomes whole. In wholeness there is no fragmentation. What's seen no longer frightens, because it has been embraced within. Then, and only then, the world stops reflecting the wound and begins to reflect the expansion. Chapter 8. Visualize without need. Create, don't beg. Once upon a time, there was a child who closed their eyes to escape. Even if it wasn't clear yet, that house wasn't a home. It was a place where surviving had become a quiet routine. While the parents argued in the kitchen or the lights went out for lack of money, he'd open a wrinkled notebook and start to draw. But he didn't draw to pass time, to impress, or out of boredom. He drew because it was a sacred act. Across those pages, entire worlds appeared. Scenes of peace, places that didn't exist outside but inside him had colors, sounds, textures. Sometimes he sketched a house with big windows and tables full of food. Other times he drew himself with laughing friends, with a mother who hugged without judging, with a father who told him he was enough. He didn't know why, but doing it felt real, not on paper, not like a dream, but like certainty. And whenever someone tried to say it was pure fantasy, something lit up within him, as if a very ancient voice, not quite his, whispered, "You're not imagining, you're remembering." Years later, the boy stopped drawing. The notebook was lost during a move and life turned urgent. Grow up, be responsible, fit in, deliver. He learned to dress well, to answer with logic, to think in goals, to structure plans. Somewhere along the way, he heard about creative visualization. Closing his eyes and seeing a different future felt familiar. Somehow it sounded like home. He began. Each night he sat to imagine what he longed for: a better life, a new job, a steady relationship, health, money, peace. He visualized with effort, searched for precise images, listened to audios, repeated affirmations, but something didn't click. No matter how much he visualized, it didn't feel like his. There was an invisible gap, a sense that what he wanted remained a picture hanging far out of reach, as if a glass wall stood between him and it. Over time, visualization turned into another task, something to do, not something to inhabit. He closed his eyes not to feel, but to strain at attracting. And every time he opened them after the exercise, what he felt was frustration. Why isn't it happening? Why doesn't it arrive? Why am I still the same? Without noticing, what had once been a sacred act of remembering turned into a plea disguised as a technique. And the universe, responding not to words or formulas, but to the base vibration from which everything is emitted, simply complied. Not with what he said, but with what his body truly held while he said it. What he held, though unadmitted, was urgency, lack, doubt. And the quantum field, neither rewarding nor punishing, only reflecting, returned that vibration again and again. That's the part no one tells when speaking of manifesting. It's not about imagining something grand and repeating it until it sticks. It's not about writing it 100 times, nor smiling in the mirror on command. It's not about setting a picture as wallpaper or hanging phrases on the wall. True visualization, the kind that moves fields, bends matter, reorganizes the entire universe, is not mental, it is vibrational. And it happens not when saying, "I want this," but when every cell in the body vibrates as if it were already true. That isn't wishing, that is remembering. It isn't wanting, it is embodying. Desire from need is noise, a blaring signal that says, "I don't have it, but I want it." And that is what the universe hears. I don't have, I am not. It isn't yet. But desire from coherence is silence, a deep pulse broadcasting this is already happening, not because it's seen, but because it's felt. At that point, matter cannot resist. It has been instructed by a signal so clear, so aligned, it has no choice but to adapt. Visualizing without need is an art, and like any sacred art, it asks for purity, not moral purity, but vibrational purity. It means an inner image cannot be held while simultaneously denying its possibility. It means love cannot be desired while feeling unworthy of it. It means one cannot picture being healthy while speaking inwardly, as if already ill. Every inner contradiction becomes a distortion in the field. Every mixed signal slows the flow. Every emotion that contradicts the words cancels the effect. This is why true visualization isn't done from thought, but from emotion, not from logic, but from frequency. And that frequency isn't forced, it's invoked. How? By remembering. Because, like it or not, there is already a memory of how what is desired feels. Maybe for a brief instant, maybe in another season of life, maybe only reflected in someone else. But it was felt. And if it was felt, it can be tuned to again. That's the key. Choose an emotion, not a spectacular image, not an impossible future. Just one emotion that represents what is longed for. Perhaps peace, lightness, gratitude, or quiet joy. Now recall a real moment, however small, where it was present. Relive it, not with the mind, but with the body. Close the eyes and let it expand. Let it become breath, posture, pulse. Once there, then visualize. Not before, not from effort, but from remembrance. Visualize like someone returning, like someone crossing the threshold of a familiar home, as if already there. Because done this way, there is nothing to ask of the universe, only vibration. And the universe, fluent in that tongue beyond any word, responds without hesitation. That is the real secret. Matter doesn't respond to repeated desire. It responds to sustained state. And a state isn't asserted. It is lived, embodied, made flesh. So visualize, but not to get. Visualize to be. Not for something to arrive, but for something within to awaken. Not to change reality, but to retune the signal that shapes it. If what's wanted isn't arriving, perhaps it isn't a lack of work, technique, or time. Perhaps it's because visualization is still being done, like someone trying to escape. True creation doesn't happen from flight. It happens from certainty. But now the frequency is chosen here. From that moment, the real shift begins. The field reconfigures. The vibration falls into alignment. The guardian doesn't vanish, but recognizes a new center. And when the center changes, reality can do nothing but comply. Now entering one of the most transformative chapters of the vibrational path. The mirror, not the one for the face, but the one that reveals the soul, even when there's resistance to look. This chapter is meant to shake, and it will. Take it gently, breathe, and allow a reading of self within it. Chapter 7. The Hidden Mirror. Everything unaccepted gets projected. There is no greater teacher than the mirror, no truer ally, and no more exacting judge. The mirror doesn't opine, justify, or shield. It simply shows. In this vibrational universe where everything is resonance, the entire reality is a mirror, not a literal or decorative one, but a deep, symbolic, precise mirror reflecting without censorship the exact frequency being held, especially what isn't recognized as one's own. It seems like the world is being watched, but what's actually seen are fragments. What is criticized in others, what irritates without clear reason, what keeps chasing in different forms, faces, stages. None of that is outside. It is reflection, an echo of an unintegrated vibration continuing to project so it can be witnessed. Not to punish, but because the soul is ready to stop running from itself. Projection is one of the oldest mechanisms of the psycho-energetic structure. When an emotion can't be accepted, out of pain, shame, or learned judgment, it gets projected, expelled, seen in others. And then it bothers, triggers, stings. Not because it lives there, but because it lives within and hasn't yet been embraced. That is why bonds repeat. Authoritarian bosses, partners who don't listen, friends who disappoint, not from bad luck, but because there are parts of self not yet claimed. By the law of vibration, the field is compelled to embody them so they can be seen. What isn't accepted is given, not as a gift, but as a mirror. Annoyed by others' arrogance? Perhaps a part still won't permit its own shine. Hurts to feel undervalued? Perhaps true self-respect hasn't taken root. Pained by not being heard? Perhaps the strangled cry inside hasn't been listened to. The field is an impersonal teacher. It doesn't cater to ego or protect the image. It reflects what is vibrated in silence. And that reflection, when rejected, turns into a storm. What isn't integrated returns with force. What's denied as emotion returns, as pattern. What's repressed as story manifests as reality again and again, until there's a choice to open the eyes, not to change the other, but to recognize what is being projected. Shadow isn't evil. Shadow is everything not yet learned to love. It is the corner of a story hidden for fear of not being loved. The emotions silenced to avoid discord. The version that didn't fit the mold of right. Today that shadow, unseen or not, keeps projecting reality. Not to punish, but to insist on being seen and brought home. Transformation begins here, when outer change is no longer begged for, and there is a seat taken before the mirror to watch what's truly at play. It isn't about searching for mistakes, but about radical honesty. Who am I being when this occurs? Which part is being ignored? Which emotion is asking for integration? These questions aren't answered with the mind, but by feeling the body, observing the pattern, acknowledging the story without judgment. When that happens, the field changes, not by magic, but by order, because it no longer needs to project what there's a willingness to see. The wonder is that understanding everything isn't necessary. There's no need to know when the pattern began or who triggered it. It's enough to sit with the reflection and stop denying the presence in it, to admit that the irritating person is an exiled part, that the recurring conflict is an unhealed wound, that the painful lack is a truth not yet recognized as false. The mirror isn't seeking blame, it's inviting a reclaiming of what is one's own. As long as the external is seen as separate, there's the stance of spectator. But life wasn't entered to be watched from outside. It was to remember that everything seen resonates, or it wouldn't stand before the eyes. Does it feel tough? It can be. But it's also the most direct door to real power. When everything is understood as reflection, pleading and accusations stop, and the place never meant to be abandoned is taken back. Vibrational creator. Do this today. Choose 3 people or situations that have recently stirred the waters. Don't analyze. Feel them in the body and ask, which part of me is shouting through this? Perhaps an unrecognized need, an old judging voice, an open childhood wound. Whatever it is, stop fleeing and begin inhabiting it. When truly seen, something breaks, or rather, something releases. The field adjusts, the reflection dissolves, and that person or situation stops pressing the bruise, because there's no longer a rejection of the part that projected the image. This is deep healing, not by removing the mirror, but by viewing with compassion what it shows. In that gaze, there is no judgment. There is integration, freedom, and truth. The self is not only light, it is also shadow. When the fight with that truth ends, the vibration becomes whole. And in wholeness, what's seen no longer frightens, because it has already been embraced within. Then, and only then, the world stops reflecting the wound and begins to mirror expansion. Chapter 8. Visualize without need. Create, don't beg. Once there was a child who closed their eyes to escape, and refocusing vibration is, at its core, remembering that the power was always here. It had just been handed over to an emotion that no longer represents who one is. Projecting from emotion is taking on the greatest responsibility of all, being the unseen author of every visible form that appears. Yet it is also the most beautiful privilege, knowing it is possible to begin again from within whenever needed, asking no one's permission, offering no explanations, because life does not hinge on what is wished for, but on what is held as truth when the world goes quiet, and only the being's vibration remains. Now to Chapter 10, one of the most important in the journey. Here lies the core of invisible self-sabotage, vibrational doubt, small in appearance, yet capable of fracturing the signal behind everything being created. It will read as a single living story, unbroken, intense, with emotion, with truth, with soul. Chapter 10. Doubt as a silent spell, when the field undermines itself without awareness. Once there was a forest. At first glance it looked like any other. Tall trees, tangled roots, damp dirt paths. But this forest kept a secret few knew. It didn't answer to maps, compasses, or lanterns. It wouldn't obey those who shouted or searched in desperation. It opened its trails only to those who walked with certainty. If someone entered full of doubts, the forest would close, as if the trees themselves shifted to mislead. The doubter got lost, not because the forest was cruel, but because the confused vibration scrambled the invisible map that revealed itself only to a clear frequency. They said a luminous spring lived at the center, able to answer any question, grant any vision, open any door, but only those who knew they would arrive ever reached it. Not the ones who wished, not the ones who merely hoped, only the ones who remembered. So it is with the quantum field. It doesn't respond to fleeting enthusiasm, nor to logic, nor to the number of times an affirmation is repeated. It responds to the strongest energetic signal, and that signal isn't in the mouth, it's in the body, the nervous system, the base emotional frequency. When that signal is fractured by doubt, everything projected becomes confused, unstable, imprecise, incomplete. Doubt isn't merely a passing feeling, it's a subtle spell that sabotages the field from within. When it does, the universe loses clear coordinates from which to organize reality. The hardest part of doubt is how rarely it shows up as doubt. It almost never announces itself as "I don't think I can." Sometimes it dresses as prudence, sometimes as humility, sometimes as critical thinking, even as spirituality. But underneath it is an old voice whispering right as a new frequency is about to be held. What if it isn't true? What if this is self-deception? What if it isn't deserved? That whisper alone can deactivate the entire field, because a frequency doesn't need to be loudly denied to weaken. It only needs a conflicting emotion held at the same time. That is vibrational incoherence, the main reason so many decrees fall flat, so many rituals feel empty, so many people do everything right, and yet nothing changes. Carl Jung called it incongruence between the conscious and the unconscious. What the mind wants gets vetoed by what the gut believes. Since the universe responds to what is deepest, truest, and most sustained, it ends up obeying shadow rather than intention. This is why 10 radiant minutes of visualization are overruled by the other 23 hours and 50 minutes spent sustaining emotions that contradict what was requested. What will the field reflect? Whatever is vibrated longest and with the greatest coherence. If doubt hums louder than the affirmation, the outcome is already decided. This isn't about becoming perfect, never feeling fear again, or erasing every insecurity. It is about the bravest act any creator can make, seeing one's own contradiction without disguises, naming the doubt, bringing it into the open, lifting it from the basement of the unconscious. As long as it operates in shadow, it becomes the true vibrational architect, and that is what gets projected, no matter what the lips insist. Doubt isn't harmless. It interrupts creation's pulse. It's like writing a beautiful spell and then crossing it out at the end. Repeat that daily, building and undoing in the same breath, and the field cannot organize reality, not out of neglect or indifference, but because a signal that shifts tone every second cannot be read. What is divided within will fragment without. What cannot sustain a coherent vibration cannot take form in the physical world. Ancient alchemists spoke of a double fire. When the flame heats and cools at once, transmutation fails. The gold won't form, the stone won't purify, the form won't reveal. The same occurs when intention and doubt are sustained together. The inner fire dims, even if outward behavior pretends all is well. What to do? Not eliminate doubt, integrate it, not silence it. Listen with such honesty that it dissolves on its own. If today the phrase is "I am abundant," yet deep down there's a feeling of not deserving, write that too. Write it with full truth. I want abundance, and I fear it won't come. It feels not meant for me. It hurts to have waited so long without seeing it. Don't do it to self-punish. Do it to break the spell. What is named loosens. What is exposed transforms. What is no longer denied loses power. Then write a new declaration, this time not parroted, but felt as a clean instruction, a vibration being chosen, not because it is already mastered, but because there is willingness to walk toward it. Say firmly, even in silence, I am learning to vibrate in abundance, and each day it feels more natural. And to refocus vibration is, in essence, remembering that the power was always here. It had only been handed over to an emotion that no longer represents the self. Projecting from emotion is accepting the greatest responsibility of all, to be the unseen author of every visible form. Yet it is also the most beautiful privilege, knowing a fresh beginning can start from within whenever needed, without asking permission, without explanations, because life does not depend on what is wished for, but on what is held as true when the world grows quiet and only the being's signal remains. Now comes Chapter 10, among the most important of the journey. Here lies the core of invisible self-sabotage, vibrational doubt, small to the eye, yet fracturing the signal behind everything being created. It reads as one continuous living story, without artificial breaks, full of feeling, truth, and soul. Chapter 10. Doubt as a silent spell, when the field undermines itself without awareness. Once there was a forest. At first sight it looked ordinary, tall trees, tangled roots, damp dirt paths. But this forest held a secret few knew. It did not follow maps, compasses, or lanterns. It did not yield to shouts or desperate searches. It opened paths only to those who walked with certainty. If someone entered full of doubts, the forest closed, as if its trees shifted to confuse. The doubter got lost, not because the forest was cruel, but because the confused vibration scrambled the invisible map that revealed itself only to a clear frequency. It was said that at the center lived a luminous spring that could answer any question, grant any vision, open any door, but only those who knew they would arrive ever reached it. Not those who wished, not those who hoped, only those who remembered. So it is with the quantum field. It doesn't respond to passing enthusiasm, to logic, or to the number of times an affirmation is repeated. It responds to the strongest energetic signal. And that signal is not the mouths. It is the bodies, the nervous systems, the base emotional frequency. When that signal is fractured by doubt, everything projected becomes confused, unstable, imprecise, incomplete. Doubt is not just a passing emotion. It is a subtle spell that sabotages the field from within. When it does, the universe no longer has clear coordinates from which to organize reality. The most complex thing about doubt is that it rarely appears as doubt. It seldom says, "I don't think I can." Sometimes it dresses as prudence, humility, critical thinking, even spirituality. But underneath it is an old voice whispering right as a new frequency is about to be sustained. What if it isn't true? What if self-deception is at work? What if it isn't deserved? That whisper alone is enough to deactivate the field, because a frequency doesn't need to be shouted down to weaken. It is enough to hold an incompatible emotion at the same time. That is vibrational incoherence. The main reason so many decrees fail, so many rituals feel empty, so many people seem to do everything right, yet nothing changes. Carl Jung called it incongruence between the conscious and the unconscious. What the mind wants is denied by what the gut believes. Because the universe answers what is deepest, truest, most sustained, it ends up obeying the shadow, not the intention. This is why 10 radiant minutes of visualization are overturned by the other 23 hours and 50 minutes spent sustaining emotions that contradict the request. What will the field mirror? Whatever is vibrated longest and with greatest coherence. If doubt hums louder than the affirmation, the result is decided. This isn't about becoming perfect, never feeling fear again, or erasing every insecurity. It is about the bravest act a creator can take, seeing personal contradiction without disguise, naming the doubt, exposing it, lifting it from the basement of the unconscious. As long as doubt operates in the dark, it becomes the true vibrational architect, and that is what gets projected, no matter what is said aloud. Doubt isn't innocent. It interrupts the pulse of creation. It's like writing a beautiful spell and then crossing it out. Repeat that daily, building and undoing in the same breath, and the field cannot organize reality, not because there is no love or listening, but because a signal that keeps changing tone cannot be read. What is divided within fragments without. What cannot maintain coherent vibration cannot take form in the physical world. Alchemists spoke of the double fire. Heating and cooling at once prevents transmutation. Gold won't form, the stone won't purify, the form won't reveal. So it is when intention and doubt are held together. The inner fire dims even if the outer self keeps performing. What to do? Not eliminate doubt. Integrate it. Not silence it. Hear it with such honesty that it dissolves. If today the phrase is, "I am abundant," while deep down there is a sense of unworthiness, write that too, fully. I want abundance, yet I'm afraid it won't come. It feels not meant for me. It hurts to have waited so long without seeing it. Don't write to punish. Write to lift the spell. What is named loosens. What is exposed transforms. What stops being denied loses its hold. Then write a new declaration, this time not parroted, but felt as a clean instruction, a vibration being chosen. Not because it is already perfectly held, but because there is willingness to walk toward it. Say firmly, even in silence, "I am learning to vibrate in abundance," and each day it feels more natural. That is truth, and truth carries more power than any forced decree. When the field is cleared of doubt, the path reveals itself, like in the forest. Not because the world has changed, but because the signal is finally clear. The frequency no longer contradicts itself. There is at last a vibrational direction the universe can follow without getting lost. Doubt is not the enemy. It's a test of focus. When the divided step ends, what seemed impossible begins to show up with an ease that once felt magical. It isn't magic. It is energetic precision. So today, don't ask for more or strain to project anything new. Do one thing. Observe vibration with radical honesty. Ask where the walk has split. One foot forward and the other back. When that doubt is found, don't deny it. Thank it. It came to show where the field still needs alignment. In that moment, without effort, theater, or urgency, a new signal begins to form, clear, crisp, powerful, and the universe, as always, will respond with the same precision with which the choice to vibrate is made. Chapter 11. The Return to Center. Stop seeking because all is already here. There was a moment, though it may not be remembered clearly, when self-habitation ceased. It wasn't a conscious choice. No one said, abandon yourself. No one taught how to forget what was. But it happened. Perhaps as a child when laughter wasn't welcomed. Perhaps when the light was shown and someone called it too much. Perhaps when something was felt intensely and a voice said, it isn't that big a deal. On one of those invisible days, there was a slow leaving of self, like walking away from home, not knowing the return would be long delayed. Parts of the frequency were dimmed. Pleasing was learned. Hiding, earning, performing, complying. In that ongoing act of forgetting, the quest was born, and the quest became life. Outside was sought what once was felt within. Signs, gurus, answers, books, promises, healing, attraction, understanding. Sometimes it seemed found, but soon everything shifted, as if the center slipped away right when it felt near, as if one more step, one more technique, one more sign was always missing. Without noticing, life became like chasing a shadow, believing one day it could be caught. But now the present has arrived, and something within knows there are no more steps to take outward. The path was never linear. It was circular. The arrival is the very place of origin, self, but now with eyes open, vibration conscious, soul willing. This is not the end of the book. It is the beginning of embodied vibration. This chapter teaches nothing new. It recalls what was hidden beneath all techniques. The center is here. The power is here. The cause of every form is here. What was sought in rituals, affirmations, or meditations is already inside, not as theory, but as an active field. Only silence was missing. Only integration was missing. So now, in this instant, it isn't about doing more. It is about being more truly oneself than ever. It's about stopping the pretense of needing anything to arrive, because now it's known that everything truly sustainable is already vibrating in the field. Matter isn't waiting for desire. It is waiting for presence. Calm breath, coherent steps, the decision to stop splitting between spoken words and emitted signal. Visualization was the beginning. Projection was the key. Feeling was the language. Dwelling will be the revolution. No longer say, I want peace. Vibrate as one already living within it. No longer say, I want love. Breathe as one already carrying it. No longer say, I want to create my reality. Walk as one who knows what is seen was first a whisper in vibration. Life will no longer happen as before, not because the world has changed, but because the vibration is no longer emitted from the persona that needed rescue. There is no waiting for the universe's permission. Now there is the voice that issues commands from the center. There is nothing to prove. There is no need to convince oneself of power. There is only a remembrance of what has always been, before doubt spoke inside. That is what occurs today, not a sudden lightning of enlightenment, not a magic transformation, but a profound decision to return, not to the past or to an old self, but to the center, to the energetic core where everything is, silence and certainty, to the space from which all is projected with a single intention, to vibrate in truth. Close the eyes for a moment, not to imagine or visualize, but to feel. Sense how the field arranges when nothing is demanded, when there is no forcing, when it is simply inhabited. Notice how the breath sets itself when answers aren't being chased, how the spine aligns when validation isn't being sought, how the universe begins to move without strain, because interference has ceased. That is the new frequency. It isn't about attraction. It is about holding the inner state with such love that the world cannot ignore it. It is about knowing there is nothing more to reach, no more techniques to master, only one truth to breathe. I already am, and as I am, I vibrate. As I vibrate, I order. Understand this with the whole being. Existence is not for seeking miracles, but for being the channel through which they happen. The miracle isn't that something arrives. The miracle is becoming the one who holds the frequency that allows everything to arrive unbidden. When energy is embodied, the universe arranges as if it had been waiting its entire existence for this moment. So, do not close this book as one who finishes something. Close it as one who activates a new state of emission. Do not turn back to reread. Do not repeat techniques. Do not jot down more phrases. Simply walk with the vibration of one already aligned. If forgetfulness comes, don't look outside. Pause, breathe, return, because the center is never lost, only distracted, and it is already known. No more instructions, only presence. No more proofs, only holding. No more affirmations, only one living frequency. The native one. The one that has always waited to be broadcast without fear. And now, at last, readiness has arrived. Do not become. Remember, do not chase, vibrate. Do not explain, emit. Because when there is a return to self, the universe remembers it turns around that soul. And that, wordless, effortless, doubtless, is the closest thing to true power. The end has been reached, but this is known. This is not a closure. It is a portal, a point of return to the most forgotten and most powerful place. Center. This was not a book to entertain the mind. It was a frequency to recall identity. And now it is known. This existence is not to ask for miracles, but to be the channel through which they unfold. No longer the seeker, now the emitter. But vibration, like all things, must be sustained. Energy does not light once and remain. It is nourished and trained. If something has ignited within through these pages, do not let it go dim. Subscribe now to the channel. Each day awaits a new audiobook. Each day a new frequency recalling power. Each day a new story not to teach, but to bring back to self. Do it for self, for the field, for the vibration. Presence here means readiness to sustain what has been activated. Click, subscribe, and begin to live each day not as a seeker, but as one who remembers being the source.